The chapter begins in a virtual reality game named Chrono Life. A gamer named Lee Ji-woo walks around in search of a party, but several people insult him because he's an amateur and refuses to accept him. He begins to call the game trash because he's frustrated and people wonder what is wrong with him. A pretty girl walks up to him and asks him if he'd like to be in a hunting party with her. Ji-woo immediately accepts and follows her as they walk into the woods. He begins to tell her about his activities and she's impressed. As she asks him how long he's been playing, he tells her he got most of his items from beginner packages, and she says he is cool. Ji-woo begins to fantasize about having a life with the girl, but comes to his senses as she says they have arrived at their destination. He says they are in the middle of the forest and she suddenly stabs him. Ji-woo asks her if she stabbed him for his weapon, and she says it's trash. She says she lured him into the forest to kill him, and says she won't want to be in a hunting party with him because he's a loser. He tries to fight back, but she cuts him in half, and the system informs her that she has met the conditions to transition into a hidden class. She then transitions into the goddess of life as she says she has killed 1,000 people. Ji-woo lies on the floor and says he has learned that the game follows the laws of the jungle. He then dies and respawns in a safe place while losing a significant amount of experience. He stands and remembers all the insults he received because of his weak equipment, and he screams in sadness. Ji-woo pulls out his reinforcing hammer and uses it on his sword, but it gets broken. He says the fastest way to becoming strong is to enhance equipment, but it breaks when it is unable to be enhanced. Ji-woo sits on the floor in his underwear because all of his equipment was unable to be enhanced and has been destroyed. He says the game is terrible, but someone suddenly drops a stick beside him. He sees an emoticon character and realizes it gave him the stick. It then waves and walks away, and Ji-woo uses the reinforcing on it. The stick successfully gets reinforced, and Ji-woo continues hitting it. He says the stick will break sooner or later and continues hitting it. Ji-woo reinforces the stick for hours and successfully achieves its maximum enhancement. He's shocked as he holds the stick and accidentally drops it, causing a massive explosion that moves around the world. Thousands of people panic and are shocked at what happens as the attack splits a continent. A record is broken in the game, and the attack killed over 850,000 players. Ji-woo remembers all the insults he received and says it's time for his enemies to learn. Ji-woo saying he's a nobody in reality and saying he doesn't excel in either sports or academics. He walks around the city while wearing a robe and his underwear and accidentally bumps into a large man. The man gets angry at Ji-woo and grabs his robe. He calls Ji-woo a stupid newbie and asks him if he wants to die. His girlfriend tells him to forget about it as she laughs and says he is scaring Ji-woo. Ji-woo calls the man a pig and he tries to attack him, but Ji-woo taps his face with the stick. He gets angrier as Ji-woo hits him, but the stick destroys him and causes a large explosion. Ji-woo says he is the strongest and calls himself the main character. Ji-woo suddenly gets a notification that tells him to repair his weapon because of its low durability. He goes to an ally, stares at the wooden stick, and realizes it has extremely low durability. He panics as he realizes he only has 2 hits left before the stick destroys, and says he is screwed. He says he must have revenge on the girl that killed him and gets motivated. Ji-woo goes to the Valley of the Dead, and a giant twin-headed dragon, which is the strongest boss monster in the game, emerges and says he has crossed the boundary of the dead. The dragon is named Eurus, and it calls Ji-woo foolish, as it says he will struggle. Ji-woo suddenly interrupts as he uses the stick to destroy one of the dragon's heads. The second head is shocked. Ji-woo sees that he only has 2 hits left. It begs him to calm down and says it has something to say. It asks him who he is, and he says it should stop bothering him as he knocks it down. He sees that he only has 1 hit left and laments, but Eurus says he can help. It offers Jiwoo its soul and tells him he will fill the stick with his soul, giving it an ego and granting it infinite durability. Jiwoo begins laughing as he says the universe wants him to have his revenge. He accepts Eurus's offer and absorbs his soul into the stick. Eurus's army suddenly emerges, and Jiwoo smiles as he defeats them. Meanwhile, a national bounty has been placed on Jiwoo, and the reward is 1 billion gold. The people are shocked as they hear the news, and the royal guards suddenly emerge with Sentry, their guildmaster. Suho, the guildmaster of Crossline, emerges with his guild, and the strongest magician named Abracadabra arrives. The Guild of Thieves named Robin Hood arrives and are led by Hong, the guild leader. Hawkeye, the king of Arden Castle, arrives with his men, and the world's top 5 guilds gather in one place. Hawkeye, who is the leader of the World Union Guild, says the World Union Guild has declared war on the heinous player killer Jiwoo. Jiwoo laughing as he stares at the wooden stick. A strange spirit suddenly emerges from the stick, and Jiwoo panics as he thinks the stick has a head. He then realizes it's Eurus, and Eurus says his soul has become one with his weapon. It then says that Jiwoo is the only person who can see or hear it, and Jiwoo asks where his other head is. Eurus also wonders where his other head went, and a paper falls in front of them. Jiwoo reads the paper and realizes he is wanted for the death of 800,000 players. Jiwoo walks around as he eats, and Eurus says users from all over the world would be after his life for the bounty. Jiwoo says he feels like a celebrity when he sees the flyers on the floor and decides to act like a loser hiding his strength. He tries to explain to Eurus, and Eurus says people will ignore him because they'll think he's weak. Jiwoo says he needs to enjoy his life, but gets shot by an arrow. Hawkeye stands on a roof, and several soldiers surround Jiwoo. He orders his men to apprehend Jiwoo, but he stands up and pulls the arrow out from his body. He says he wanted to live peacefully, but Hawkeye and his men have brought their situation upon themselves. Jiwoo uses the stick to create a large explosion that leaves Hawkeye in shock. The explosion takes down the whole army, and Hawkeye sees that the entire city has been destroyed. Jiwoo walks to him and he breaks a summoning crystal. He asks the members of the Union to answer his call and activates a large-scale teleportation, which teleports the entire Union army to his location. He points at Jiwoo and asks everyone to attack him, and Jiwoo uses the stick to fight back. Eurus is shocked as he watches Jiwoo fight and says he can't take on thousands of people at once. He says the World Union army isn't a joke, and he can only defeat them by mobilizing his army. Eurus reveals he misunderstood Jiwoo's power, and Jiwoo deflects Abracadabra's spell with ease. She's shocked that he broke through her ancient magic and tries to attack him but gets knocked down. Jiwoo fights 3 million soldiers who are all members of the World Union, and the outcome was disastrous as he defeated them all. Hawkeye is in shock and fear as he doesn't believe what just happened. Jiwoo stands in front of him and says he is the reason that he was unable to control his strength. He then reminds Hawkeye that he shot him with an arrow and uses the stick to destroy him. The news of the battle became a hot topic around the world, and Jiwoo talks to Eurus. He sees someone walking toward him and realizes it is the woman who killed him in the forest. She then says it's been a while since they've seen each other, and he stares at her. Millions of corpses lying on the ground after a battle against Jiwoo. Jiwoo stands and stares at the woman that killed him as he remembers how she insulted him. The woman asks him how he has been and says she didn't expect to meet him again. He asks her if she dyed her hair and says it changed because she changed her hidden job. He says her job changed to the goddess of life after killing 1,000 people, and she says it's amusing. Jiwoo gets angry and attacks her, but she dodges. He then lands a hit on her, but she emerges unscathed, and he is left in shock. She tells him he's gotten stronger, but says his attack is too weak to kill her. Eurus panics because the woman is still alive, and he gets shocked because she locks eyes with him. Jiwoo says he is sure he hit her, but asks how she's still alive. She asks him if he thinks a mortal can kill a god, and he rushes at her. He attacks her several times with the stick, and Eurus says it feels like the entire continent is shaking. The goddess tells him his attacks are useless as she flies above him and lands. She tells him to give up and says he will never be able to kill her. Jiwoo begins to walk away and she asks him where he is going. He begins swinging his arm and says he wants to see how hard he can swing and if he can break the planet in two. Jiwoo reminds her that she said he can't kill her himself, and he says destroying the planet will send her flying into space or destroy her. She tells him it's impossible because he is a human, and he says he's going to hit it with all his might. He realizes he didn't use his full strength while fighting the Union, and she says he will be destroyed along with the planet. Jiwoo remembers the ill treatment he received and begins to laugh. He tells her not to mess with a person who has nothing to lose, and strikes the ground with the stick. The impact sends a shockwave around the planet that leads to its destruction. In a virtual reality capsule room, several players see that they were removed from the game, and they complain to the man in charge of the room. He tries to calm them as he doesn't know what happened, and they receive a message. They are informed that their servers are undergoing maintenance, and some of the players are upset. Jiwoo suddenly remains in the game as the system informs him there is only one active user. He's shocked to see the computerized surroundings, and a man suddenly tells him the name of the planet he destroyed. Jiwoo asks him who he is, and he wears a scary smile as he says he is God. The strange man telling Jiwoo the name of the planet he just destroyed. He then puts on a scary smile as he says he is God. And Jiwoo says it's not his problem since that's the identity he has chosen. He asks the man if he has seen the goddess, but the man says they are the only ones around. He then reminds Jiwoo that he destroyed the world and killed everyone. Jiwoo begins to laugh as he says his revenge was successful, and he says he's extremely happy. He tries to call Eurus out to tell him about his successful revenge, but the man reminds him that no one else is around. Jiwoo sees that he's the only active player and tries asking the man who he really is. The man tries to talk but gets interrupted, and he says it was nice that they met each other. Jiwoo is then logged out of the game and he emerges from a capsule. He frowns as he wonders why the strange man showed up, and a bearded man walks to him and tells Jiwoo everything about himself. Jiwoo is shocked that the man knows a lot about him, and he says he is the person that's going to steal his wooden stick. Jiwoo introduces himself as a 21-year-old college student who enjoys playing Chrono Life and was lucky to make the wooden stick. He says he used the power to beat up everyone he didn't like, and a strange man who calls himself God appeared and disappeared. Jiwoo is nervous as he eats in a restaurant with the bearded man, who then reveals that he is the president of Chrono Life. His name is Choi Deok-bae, and Jiwoo realizes he isn't a gangster. The men standing with him are company employees, and Jiwoo wonders why the president came to find him. Choi says he has to retrieve the wooden stick because it is a bug item and points out how it's impossible to have enhanced the stick to reach its maximum level. Later, some players fight a beast near the vicinity of Front Town, and one of the players, named Kyo Nim, attacks it without her party. Jiwoo watches the commotion that ensues while Eurus eats some meat. He stares at the wooden stick and remembers the rest of his conversation with Choi. Choi says the company wants him to retrieve the wooden stick, but says it's unfair. He says the stick isn't a bug item and he won't interfere with any more users. He says Jiwoo is free to do anything as a user, and the owner of the store hits him for mixing different soups together. Jiwoo continues to stare at the stick and hears as the party members begin to insult Kyo. The party leader blames her for their loss. Earlier, Choi asks Jiwoo for a favor and asks him to refrain from destroying the game so he can take his time to enjoy it. Kyo gets kicked out of her party as the leader spits on her, and Jiwoo says the game is about the survival of the fittest. He says he will enjoy the game however he likes and prepares to eliminate the party, but sees as Kyo rants about it. He then realizes she is ranting like he did when he was a newbie, and she suddenly gets attacked by a swarm of monsters. Ji-woo jumps onto the field as she is about to be attacked, and he uses his stick to defeat all the monsters. Kyo panics but suddenly sees that the monsters are dead, and she wonders why he ended up helping her. Ji-woo then says he helped her because it looked fun, and he asks Kyo if she wants to be in a party, and he says his story is just beginning. The end. Thank you for watching. Please check out our other videos and make sure to subscribe and tap that bell icon to be notified about our latest videos. We'll see you next time.